In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make detailed elements to really make your pictures pop and come alive. You may notice that since the last time I used this picture in a demo, I've added a little bit to it. I've added windows over here, and that's so I can have some more contrast with the textured element and the windows, and also to tie this building into the rest of the picture. I've also added this building in the corner and this little shack thing on top of the roof. And that is, well, one, because they're in the original photograph, but two, I made sure to include them because, like I said all the way in the beginning, having buildings and objects in your picture that have a side to them really adds depth and helps the viewer understand the depth of the picture. And it helps understand where the light is coming from. We see that the light is coming from here because this is light and this is in shadow. And we see that this is in shadow from this building. Anyway, onwards to the point of this video, which is how to add detail. I'm going to turn the picture layer on. I copied the picture layer from the bottom and brought it all the way to the top, so that way instead of turning off all the layers to see what's underneath it, I can just turn this layer on and off. When I turn this layer on, I can see that there are some detailed things in this picture, like this railing on this building, on this left building, and there's also a fire escape over here. We can trace these objects in Photoshop by using the lasso tool, and we could do that by making very fine selections. I instead would advise you, I'm going to deselect, instead I would advise you to treat these detailed elements the same way that we treat rounded objects, and by that I mean making them in Illustrator and then copying them back into Photoshop. And doing that will make something like this, which has really fine lines. It's so much easier to make this kind of thing in Illustrator and the fire escape as well, because you can do straight lines and you can duplicate things a lot easier. And while this is technically the Photoshop project, something I want to stress over all of the projects is that these programs, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, are really meant to be integrated together. So this is a good example of when it's a good idea to use Illustrator together with Photoshop to create your best kind of artwork. The way that we do this, and I'll repeat it again, is for you to make sure that the picture layer is selected. You hit Command A if you're in a Mac and Control A if you're in a PC, and then you hit Command or Control C to copy it. Then we're going to go to Illustrator, and we need to make a new document. We want the document to have the same dimensions as our original Photoshop picture. And then we're going to hit Command or Control V to paste it. This doesn't seem to be the exact right size, but it's not a big deal because we can always resize things when we get back to Photoshop. I'm going to lock this layer, and that's so we can trace on top of it without moving it. And now I'm going to start with the railing because I always like to do the easiest things first. I'm going to use the pen tool, and I see already that the pen tool right now has a white fill, that we have a white fill and we have no stroke. So my first thing is just to make the stroke, and I want to give the stroke a color so that way it's easy to see. And I'm just drawing this line all the way out. And then I hit the letter V to end the line. I'm actually going to make this line longer by hitting this point and then using the arrow tool to nudge it over. And I'm going to do that so that way the line will go off the page and I won't have to worry about it not being long enough. Now I'm going to, instead of drawing a new line, I'm just going to duplicate this line. And I'm going to do that by having this line selected and then holding down Option and dragging. Now we have two of the same line. Perfect. Now I'm going to use not the pen tool, I'm going to use the line segment tool. The shortcut for that is backslash. On a Mac keyboard, it's right underneath the delete button. I'm not sure where you'd find it on a PC. Now we're going to drag this line down. Perfect. Great, we've got a line. We can see that it's a little bit off, and I think it's okay. I'm a little neurotic, so I'm going to try my best. Ooh, I accidentally just clicked into the sublayer. So I'm going to try my best to get it to line up, but I think that this is good enough. And now, to get the smaller lines, instead of making this line and then another line, I'm actually just going to duplicate it after I have a bunch. Now, before I even start, I'm going to make the thickness. Nope. Let's keep that. And now I'm going to make new lines. Sorry if that's confusing when you watch it. I'm making the smaller lines now. And what I'm going to do is make these lines thinner. I don't want to go more than 0.5 of the line because I'm worried that it won't be visible once we make it in Photoshop. And something else I want to do is actually make these lines longer than the building. So I'm going to put this railing behind the building layer, and I think this is safer. So now I'm going to just duplicate these lines. I'm just going to do it a bunch of times. And we don't have to worry about them being evenly spaced because I can use a very good tool in Illustrator to automatically space them evenly. So these are all the lines I'm going to use. Now I select all of them. Now if you see the Align section in the Properties panel, if you click on these three lines, you see the Distribute Objects button. Okay, so these Distribute Objects will distribute the objects. I want to point out the Align To button on this panel, because by default it could be either on Artboard or Key Object. We want it to be aligned to Selection. Let me show you what happens if it's on Key Object. If I hit any of these, it just zaps them all into one. That's obviously not what we want. So I'm going to get out of that panel and then hit Undo. Instead, I'm going to Align to Selection. So that means it's aligning all of these together. And I just distributed them evenly by choosing this button. Okay, now I'm going to select all of these. Now that I'm looking at this, I think that this isn't enough of a contrast between the 5 and the 1. So I'm actually just going to risk it and make them 0.25, and I think that that shows up, that has a better contrast. So hopefully that works out, and if it doesn't, we can always fix it afterwards. I also am noticing, as I look at this closer, that this railing has a bottom line too, and I think that it's better to do that sooner rather than later. I think it's only going to be more difficult to add that, so I'm going to just add it right now. And now let's duplicate these. I just selected all of them, and now I'm going to duplicate them again. And I'm just going to duplicate it every time. And it doesn't need to align to the actual railing, it just needs to, at this point, because we're not going to be comparing it to the actual thing, we're not going to be comparing this railing to the actual one when we look at the finished work. We just want it to look nice the way it is. And I think that I'm also not distributing this super evenly. That we want to be careful of this, so that way it's on the regular line properly. But I'm not distributing this so evenly. At the end, I'm going to go back and distribute all of it evenly. Okay, and I'm just going to keep distributing this. What I can also do is select, let's say, 3 of them at a time. Or even more, I could select 4 of them at a time. And I could duplicate 4 of them at a time. And that'll make this even faster. Now I'm going to just duplicate one of them. I see that this one's a little low, so I'm going to fix that. Okay, now I'm just going to make one more. Okay, now I'm going to select, ooh, I just moved it. See, I must have let go of Option too quickly. Okay, now I'm zooming out so I can see all of them, and I'm going to select all of these lines. I didn't get all of them, so let me just hit Shift and go back. I'm hitting Shift so I can continue selecting. Okay, and now I'm going to use the Distribute button, and it just distributed it all evenly. Did it do it? It looks pretty even to me. And if it's not perfect, it's okay. We can always fix it later. For yours, I'm going to encourage you to make sure that it's better and not to just not fix things. But for the sake of keeping this video shorter, I'm going to be at peace with how it looks. Now I'm going to select everything. I'm going to copy it and then bring it into Photoshop. Let's deselect. So that's Command or Control D. Let's turn this off. And this shape is going to be on top. Well, I'm actually going to put it right below this layer. So let's, what's layer? This is these are the layers that are this, and I want it to be on top of that. So I'm going to select this layer. That way it will paste right on top of it. I'm hitting Command V, Control V if you have a PC, and we're going to hit pixels, so it pastes in as pixels. And now we have this orange shape, this orange railing, which kind of blends into the background. That's not a big deal because we're about to change the color. I'm going to hit Command. I'm holding down Command while I hit the thumbnail, which selects the artwork. And now I'm going to select black. This is detailed, so I want it to really show up. Because I want it to show up, I'm going to use the darkest color. I'm going to hit fill, and it's going to fill it in black. Deselect. And now we have this railing. I can lower it, so that way it gets totally covered by the building. And I think that makes it look so much more interesting. If we wanted to keep working on this, we could also make the fire escape. The fire escape is really the exact same principle. It's a little more complicated than, I'm using the marquee tool now. It's a little more complicated than the railing because it has more complicated shape. But what you want to do is exactly like we just did for the railing. You're really just making the shape. You're making the shape once, and then you just duplicate it a few times. So I'm going to try doing this really quickly. When you make yours, you should be slower and more detailed, but I'm trying to make the video shorter because that makes it easier for you guys to watch it. Pen tool. I'm going to hit the letter V. Now I'm switching it so it's a stroke. So now I'm using a combination of strokes and fills, and I think that this is just down, 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 down. I bet if I put in a few more, I'm not going to put in a few more. I am, however, going to make them thinner. And I'm going to distribute them. We just need to make sure that they line up to the right places. See, now that doesn't look right. There's no such thing as a quick fix in graphic design. Fixing one thing always leads to fixing something else. Asking to make a 2-minute fix is kind of a big joke in graphic design because things just always take more time than you hope they will or expect they will. I don't know about hopes. That's a different thing. Anyway, we have this one box. Now let's say I make this one. I'm holding down Shift to get perfectly straight lines. And now I'm going to make another line over here. These are made of X's, so I'm just going to make one X. And now I'm going to duplicate this X 3 times, or however many times it takes to fill it. 3 is not enough. 4 seems to be the magic number. So that's 4 times. And now I'm just going to reuse this shape for all of them. And it's okay to me if it doesn't match the exact same thing as the original picture. Like I think in the original picture, this one right here is longer than the rest of them. I don't actually care about that. I'm just going to make it go down. Because when we look at the original picture, we won't see it, and we don't even know where the ground is in this. This one over here is a little bit different. Sorry, I know that this video is getting kind of long. Hopefully it'll be gonna be done momentarily. Okay, so then we just want to get this part out. And this part's a little different because it's coming straight from the roof. Let's swap that so that way it's filled. We can do the railing with a line. And then we'd want to swap that. Oh, we want to give this a stroke. Also, I'm going to make it a little heavier so it feels weightier. Now I'm going to continue making the lines for this one. Well, this I can also duplicate. Now I can make another line. I'm going to click away so I can make more lines. We want the rest of them to be at 1. These 2 lines don't seem to be long enough, so I have to move them over. This is what happens when you try to rush. I'm going to make this one line weightier because it's the banister for here. And then the ones in between, I'm going to make regular 1-point lines. Use the line tool. We want to draw lines at 1. Now I'm just going to make one. Look how thin these ones look. These 1-point lines look compared to the thick 3-point lines. Just finish. Almost done. However long this is taking in Illustrator, it would take much longer in Photoshop. So now you can, because for each of these we only had to make them once. Now I'm going to select this entire shape, copy it, and I can select the entire shape at the same time because it's all going to be the same color in Photoshop. Now this fire escape is supposed to go on top of this building, so I'm going to put it on top of the middle building layer. I'm going to hit Command V, Control V if you have a PC, pixels, great. Now I'm going to hit the check mark. Wow, I didn't realize how much orange I'd be using in this class. Last semester I did everything in black. Well, I guess last semester really I did everything in pink, the extra colors. Okay. So the problem here is that it doesn't seem to match the windows exactly. But it doesn't seem to match the windows in the photograph either. So let's chalk it up to that. Now we're going to, again, hit Command and the thumbnail. And then we can edit, fill with black. Deselect. So I know this video is a little bit longer than they usually are, but that is how you make details in Photoshop. That's how you use Illustrator to make the details so you can bring them into Photoshop. If you have any questions, please let me know.